We have 3 groups of candidates tonight. The first will be our school board candidates, followed by our congressional candidates, and lastly, our school board candidates. So County board, thank you, Mr. Oliver. So starting us off tonight is going to be school board candidate Noah Simon. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you and good evening. Since I decided to run back in November, I've had over 250 meetings, and I've met with parents, I've met with staff, I've met with students, I've met with administrators, I've met with some of you in this room. And the question I get the most is, why are you running? And to me, it's quite simple. Like any parent in this room, I want our schools to be the best they can possibly be. I believe that great schools lead to great communities, and that's very important to me. I've dedicated hundreds of volunteer leadership hours on school-related issues. And simply put, I now want to have a vote. I want to be able to put my style of leadership and my ideas to the test to make a real impact on Arlington Public Schools. There are 5 priority areas where I believe I can make the greatest impact, but I say these within the context of a budget. I understand that Arlington Public Schools are very well funded, but I also understand that we don't have endless resources. The first is to address our overcrowding issue. We're growing at about 800 students a year, or roughly an elementary school and a half. The next one is to get at disparities in achievement. The next is to attract, develop, and retain the highest quality staff through creative incentives. And the final 2, working towards a comprehensive wellness policy for Arlington, as well as infusing appropriate technology into the classroom to supplement, not replace instruction. My leadership style is one that invites partnership, but will produce results that you as taxpayers expect. Ladies and gentlemen, the fact that I am unopposed does not mean that your vote is unimportant. I ask for that vote tonight, and I thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Simon. Our next speaker will be Dr. Emma Viola Sanchez.
Good evening. Thank you very much for your invitation and holding this candidates forum. I am Emma Viola Sanchez, your candidate for Arlington's County School Board. I have served on the board since 2009 and elected chair this year. I have 35 years of experience as an Arlington Public Schools educator, a Georgetown University professor, and a community activist. And I'm the mother of 2 Arlington Public Schools graduates. From all of this, I bring a unique perspective in my service to the school board. In working collaboratively with school board members, staff, and community, I believe we have made progress in several areas during my first term, such as supporting more science and technology initiatives, supporting expansion of world languages, supporting new facilities, and adopting increased capacity through our capital improvement plan. So why I'm running again? My job is not done. I have 3 priorities: ensuring educational excellence for students, strengthening our student-centered schools, and providing adequate facilities for our growing student population. The fact is that Arlington Public Schools student enrollment is expected to increase in the foreseeable future. In the next 10 years, we anticipate additional 7,000 students. Yes, and our students must be prepared to pursue higher education and have the skills to succeed in a global workplace. So I ask for your support. I ask for your vote on November the 6th. And also, please vote and support our school bond referendum that will go far to address the needs of our growing student population. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Viola Sanchez. Our next, our first forum tonight is going to be for Congress. So if I could ask all our congressional candidates to come forward, please. All right. So we have with us tonight Jason Howell, Jim Moran, Janet Murphy, and Patrick Murray. And Mr. Bostwick, was there a determined order? They're sitting in the determined order. I think the only thing that I don't think was announced previously, which is that the order in which you're doing your opening statements is the same order in which you'll do your closing.
And I get to go first. Good evening, everybody. I'm Patrick Murray. I'm the Republican candidate for United States Congress here in the 8th District of Virginia. I just want to thank the Arlington County Civic Federation for putting this on. And it's nice to see some friends in the crowd. This is my second time to run, so it's nice to be back here. We had a full house in 2010 when we ran here. And there may be a few people at home tonight watching the First Lady speaking at the Democrat convention. But I look forward to having a debate with you all tonight. I'm a retired Army officer. I spent 24 years around the world in the military. It's been nice since 2010 to stay here and to put down some roots and to get involved locally. And that's something that I've enjoyed doing for the first time, having that opportunity. After being everywhere from Baghdad to Belgrade and numerous places in between. So I want to ask something of you all tonight. And that is, we have a very important election. It's 63 days away. And so I just want to ask you to approach this evening and indeed the election, not so much from a party perspective, because if all we do is vote straight line, and all we do is just stay on our hyper-partisan sides, we're not going to get anywhere. And I think that's, to a great extent, led us into the situation that we have right now. I think we need to be an American first and look at the situation that we have, and we need to elect individuals who think more about our next generation than they do the next election. And that's why I'm running for Congress. It's that next generation, ladies and gentlemen, that have $16 trillion of debt to deal with and many other issues, and I hope we get into those this evening. Thank you again, and I look forward to your questions.
Next, I gather. I'm proud of the fact that the 8th Congressional District is one of the finest places in which to live and work and play and raise a family and retire with dignity, any place in the country. And that's because of the residents, the businesses, the nonprofits, the local government, and the single largest employer here, the federal government. But we cannot take the strength of our economy and the quality of our lives for granted. In fact, they may be more jeopardized today than they've been in a very long time. You know, I'm a relative newbie compared to our neighbor Frank Wolf, in the Congress, but I've been around long enough to have worked with Frank in getting money for the metro system, Roslyn through Ballston and out to Dulles now, and with Congressman Davis and transforming the Lorton prison area into a nice residential and recreational area, and Senator John Warner and getting a $1.5 billion earmark to widen Woodrow Wilson Bridge, which needed to be done. And dozens of other projects that contributed to the welfare of this community. But they were pragmatic Republicans who would put aside partisanship in the public interest. That is no longer the case with the majority of these Tea Party Republicans who represent the majority in the Congress today. They would have you believe that the federal government is the enemy and that the Congress's role is to continue to cut taxes. Look at their 10-year budget plan, another $4.6 trillion in reduced revenue, most of it coming from programs for the poor. I don't think that that is the future of America. That's not my vision of America. I think we need to continue to be able to regulate, to protect our environment. I think we ought to invest in education, research, and innovation, clean water, clean energy, the kinds of things that will provide the foundation for an even better future for our children and grandchildren. And that's why I'm running for the Congress, and I seek your support. Thank you very much.
ladies and gentlemen. My name is Janet Murphy. I'm the Independent Green Party candidate for U.S. House of Representatives in Virginia. Independent Green stands for positive solutions. We advocate for more trains, less traffic, running on green energy, more candidates, less apathy, and fiscally conservative, socially responsible solutions. More candidates, less apathy means putting candidates in office at every level. This year in Virginia, the Independent Greens put more candidates on the ballot for U.S. House of Representatives than any third party in almost 100 years. We have Gail Farrell Parker in the 1st Congressional District, Pete Marchetti in the 11th, Dr. Ken Hildebrand in the 5th, and Kevin Chisholm is running independent in the 10th, but we put him on there, and I'm running in the 8th Congressional District. Not to mention the efforts that we expended putting 3 third-party candidates on the ballot for president in Virginia this year. Virgil Good will be on the ballot, Jill Stein will be on the ballot, Gary Johnson will be on the ballot. You will have choices, more voices. All right, meanwhile, back at how to get more trains and less traffic rolling here in the United States. We advocate for cutting the subsidies to oil, auto, asphalt, and cement. The Sierra Club has all kinds of plans to get people moving without burning fossil fuels. They've been working on it for years. Roger Diedrich and all those great folks over there have many plans. We need to support more jobs, re-entry into jobs for all sectors, programs to bring the people into jobs, and defense jobs need to transition to other battles and keep what works, which is the teamwork and the money that the Defense Department has. We could really use that over in other areas. The 6 Walmart heirs have more wealth than the lowest 42% of the entire population of the United States here in America today. My name's Janet Murphy. I'm offering myself to run for U.S. House of Representatives in the 8th Congressional District, Independent Green. Thank you.
Hello, good evening, and thank you, Arlington Civic Federation, for having me and really all of us candidates here, giving us an equal opportunity to earn your vote. It's very democratic of you. My name is Jason J. Howell, and I'm running as an independent for Congress. You'll see my name exactly like that, Jason J. Howell. I'll be 4th on the list because I'll be representing people instead of party. I understand that's a very serious undertaking, and I'm happy to do it. My wife Jennifer and I, and about 40 volunteers and 60 individual donors, and 1,800 of our neighbors who signed a petition to get me on the ballot have been working on our campaign for over a year now. We've learned a lot, we've worked a lot, and we're happy to do it because it's worth it. By way of background, my parents were immigrants from the Caribbean. I was born in California, but I've lived in this area for about 25 years. I'm going next month to my high school reunion at McLean Hilton for W.T. Woodson High School. Any W.T. Woodson folks out here? Not really? It's okay. I'll tell them about you. How about that? I worked my way through college, Northern Virginia Community College and George Mason University as a bank teller. Basically, my entire career has been accounting and finance, whether it's being an accountant, whether it's being a teller, whether it's hiring accounting and finance recruiters and the like. I'm here because I want to take that experience and bring it to our challenges with tax policy, with the deficit, with economic policy, the things we're supposed to be working on over the next couple of years. The love, liberty, and leadership of the United States of America is too important to let persistent partisan politics ruin our republic. I look forward to telling you how you and I can together make history and actually fix things.
Thank you. So now we will have questions from member delegates, and I will ask all our member delegates to walk to the center podium, the center aisle microphone to ask your questions. Those individuals are Beth Wolf, Bob Atkins, Wayne Kubicki, Pat Spann, Jim Pebley, and that's it. So, and we will go with the first response from Mr. Moran, the second from Ms. Murphy, and on down the table. You have to turn it on.
Hello? This question is for Congressman Moran. Given the recent controversy with regard to questions by Missouri Senate candidate Todd Akin about pregnancy and legitimate rape, as Mr. Akin phrased it, do you believe Mr. Akin's comments should disqualify him from becoming a U.S. Senator?
I think that's up to the Republican Party and up to Claire McCaskill to defeat him at the polls. That's our democratic system. I think it provides a little insight to the voters as to Todd's extremism. I know Todd. I vote pretty much, I think I've always voted contrary to his vote. And I certainly take great exception to his comment. It was offensive. And it's offensive not just to women, but to men as well. And I hope and trust that Mr. Akin will be defeated at the polls for that reason and for many others.
Ms. Murphy.
Thank you. I think that's the saddest thing. It's a terribly sad thing to hear someone have such an idiotic idea who is actually has a position of responsibility. And I can only imagine he was just trying to turn himself into a complete pretzel to try to understand why the party has that position anyway. It really is a private matter. It's a terribly sad thing. So that's what I think. And as far as him being called out and denounced for it, I suppose there's people who are aligned with him. I think that's even sillier. That lady from Saturday Night Live thinks he made sense. But that's just, wait.
Mr. Murray.
Well, I agree, and I think Mr. Akin should step down. In fact, I support the fact, and I'm proud of my party for repudiating him from top to bottom. In fact, he will have to decide if he's going to be the one to step down or not, and I hope that he ultimately decides to do that. Now, if outrageous statements are not a reason to serve in Congress, Jim would have been gone a long time ago. Let me just read you something. Everybody knows who Henry Waxman is, congressman from California. Now, he's a serious congressman. I don't agree with him politically on a whole lot of things, but here's this quote. This is about some of his anti-Semitic remarks that Jim made. Mr. Moran's remarks were grossly irresponsible. Under any interpretation, they violate the basic standards we hold ourselves to as Democrats. We hope that Jim reflects on his actions. He will decide not to seek re-election to the House of Representatives. Should he seek re-election, we cannot and will not support his candidacy.
Before I call on Mr. Howell to respond, I would like to remind all member delegates that the rules state that there will be no clapping, jeering, any show of support or opposition to any statement that's made by any of the candidates you hear tonight. There will be a round of applause at the end for all of them. So I would admonish everybody to please hold your applause or approval, disapproval till the end. Mr. Howell.
Of course, if I make you laugh, then you're going to have to laugh, right? Gotcha. Certainly, Mr. Akin's remarks were horrible. They've been repudiated. The president said it best, rape is rape. We can leave it at that. The question was asked, should he step down? Yeah, he should, of course. The reason that we're an exceptional country, though, is because we are a country of rights and laws and the rest of it. And unless he steps down by September 15th in Missouri, he will be on that ballot, even if he dies. Missouri has one of the most strict codes when it comes to ballot access. So we have until, the country has until September 15th to convince him that he's not the kind of representative that we would like in Congress or perhaps in any leadership position. What I support is making sure that we hold ourselves in the way that makes common sense. You know, this isn't a partisan issue to me. A lot of the issues that we work on, that we talk about, that we try to defeat or support, the best ones are really common sense. That's what my candidacy is about being rational, being reasonable, and most certainly being effective. And I look forward to sharing that experience and those values with you.
Thank you. Mr. Atkins, and this, the first response will be from Ms. Murphy.
Okay. The question for Congressman Moran. Given everything that is happening with Syria, the civil war going on, coupled with the ongoing tensions with Iran and their nuclear program, is the strained state of U.S.-Israeli relations a problem affecting their security? Shouldn't we be doing more for our traditional ally?
Ms. Murphy, please respond.
I think we're doing way too much for that ally. I think they're way out of line with the young woman who was bulldozed to death by the bulldozer over there in Palestine, Corinne. I'm sorry, I don't remember her name. I think they're off base in Palestine entirely. I think we've had way too much of reorganizing the entire Middle East to their purpose. So, no, thank you.
Ms. Murray.
I couldn't disagree more. We have one solid, strong, democratic ally in the Middle East, and that is Israel. Israel is at their best when they know we have their back. And right now we don't. And they're faced with a lot of issues. Syria is imploding, as we all know. Iran is on the verge of they're aggressively seeking nuclear weapons. And I have a great concern about where we are with relations with our relations with Israel. And if I'm your congressman, I will always support Israel 100%. When there's a bipartisan letter written by Congressman Steny Hoyer and the Republican congressman from Virginia, that was sent to Barack Obama, that says we need continuous, strong, bipartisan support for Israel, I will sign that. My opponent didn't. And when there's a legislation to move our embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, I will support that. Almost every single member of Congress, Republican, Democrat, Martian, signed that letter, that bill. My opponent did not. I will always support Israel. And that is something that is a foundation for me.
Mr. Howell.
Well, I'd love to unpack that question a little bit, because you've asked about Syria and you brought in Israel, and there's a lot going on in the Middle East. We have more friends in Israel, which is a good thing. One of the better friends we have in the Middle East is Turkey. And right now, 20,000 of the folks that have come out of Syria are residing in Turkey. They're leaning on us to try to do something, whether it's a soft no-fly zone or something else, to say, how can we abate what's happening with Syria and how it's impacting Turkey? We have a really important problem there, important challenge, and we can work on that. We can work on that in concert with Israel, who is a good friend, and that's unquestioned. And I think the spin has been a little bit high over the past year or two with Mr. Obama, and whether he supports them or not. I think he's been pretty clear that he's tried to support him as much as he could. But we have other friends that we should leverage. Saudi Arabia is a friend in the Middle East. Let's not forget that. So with all the friends that we have in the Middle East and all the challenges that there are in the Middle East, we should find better ways and nuanced ways, innovative ways to lean on those partners to work on the big problems that the Middle East has. Certainly Syria is one, and there are multiple others. We can do more.
Mr. Moran.
With regard to Syria, I support the uprising against the president of Syria, because I think Bashar al-Assad is a dictator and does not hold to the values that represent the United States' foreign policy principles. The insurgency would be far more successful if they were not armed, and they're being armed primarily by Russians. The Russian arms dealer, Rosenborn Export, also sells the attack helicopters to the United States in Afghanistan. So we're indirectly supporting the source of lethal arms to the Syrian regime. I offered an amendment on the floor to prevent that support from continuing. It passed with over 400 votes. It was one of the few bipartisan amendments to actually pass in the Congress this year. There are things like that we need to be doing, but certainly not putting boots on the ground again in a war against another Muslim country. I would be opposed to that, although I do think we did the right thing with regard to Libya. In terms of Iran, I work very closely with Howard Berman, the ranking Democrat on the Foreign Affairs Committee, to provide the kind of technology that empowers the Iranian people to rebel against their leadership, both the Ayatollah and Ahmadinejad. And I will continue to work with Mr. Berman and others to empower the opposition to the existing regime in Iran.
Mr. Kubicki.
Thank you for all coming this evening. Congress's approval rating is, I think, below used car salesmen these days. I think it's approaching single digits. In his State of the Union back in January, the president highlighted congressional insider trading and conflict of interest with their stock ownership as major problems. What does Congress need to do in this upcoming session to clean up its act and regain the respect of the American people?
Let's do Mr. Murray.
Well, I'm a Republican. I'm out meeting people all the time, and so I meet just a few Democrats every now and then, especially when I'm here in Arlington. And I get asked this question a lot. Are there anything that you agree with President Obama on? And actually there are. And one of them is what the gentleman asked the question. So the President of the United States gets he or she someday gets a lot of speeches. But the biggest one of the year is the State of the Union. This year, President Obama pointing out the fact that we have such a lack of civility in our politics, and that the congressional approval rating is 10%. And other than family members, I'd like to know who thinks Congress is doing a good job. But he pointed out, he took part of his State of the Union to point out the fact that a few members of Congress were using some privileged information to do their own trading, their own personal trading. That is insider trading. It is illegal. My opponent did that. And 90 trades the day after a classified briefing, and frankly, you know, Jim's done pretty well. He's a pretty wealthy guy now. And I'm sure that insider trading had a whole lot to do with it. And so no, that you wonder why we have such an issue with hyper-partisanship and everything else. That's one of those reasons.
Mr. Howell.
Congress. I think their approval rating is lower than even lawyers, and the fact that they're all lawyers, that's kind of strange at the same time. You know, it's a big reason why I'm running. How do you fix Congress? What do? Well, we keep electing partisan people, and we expect them to give us nonpartisan results. Is that our fault, or is it theirs? I'm doing something that I decided to do last summer with the blessing of my wife, because I do want to affect our politics in a serious way. We have zero independents right now in the U.S. House of Representatives. It's been a long time since we've ever had one. We have an opportunity as a community to say, you know what, we're going to do something really different. No matter who wins the presidency, no matter who has control of the House or the Senate, we're going to make real news on November 7th, the day after the election, by sending an independent to the U.S. House. That will confuse them. That'll be a good thing. We'll be on our way, and that will be impactful. That'll be a news cycle that flows much longer than even who wins presidency, because they'll have to figure out how to deal with someone who isn't beholden to whoever is speaker, whoever is minority leader. And actually, it'll stiffen the spines of those other 434 who say, you know what, if he can get elected without a party, then maybe I can vote my conscience. That's the impact I'm trying to make, and I need all of you to help make that.
Mr. Moran.
Okay, well, first of all, to answer your question directly, I'm a co-sponsor of the Stock Act that requires complete disclosure of all financial transactions on the part of members of Congress. The reason why the Congress is in such low esteem, and I agree it is dysfunctional, it doesn't deserve any higher rating than it gets, is because the Republican majority in the Congress is determined to ensure that President Obama have no legislative victories to his credit. And the one thing that he was able to accomplish when there was a Democratic majority, 33 times they've had votes to repeal the Affordable Care Act. Now, with regard to Mr. Murray's accusation, first of all, I was never at this meeting where supposedly inside information was disclosed that the economy was on the verge of collapse. My wife, a wonderful woman, sold a mutual fund that happened to have small amounts of shares of 92 different stocks in it. She sold it the very week the market had already dropped 1,000 points. Why the owner of a business would consult with her husband when she has two sons working on Wall Street in financial investments is beyond me, and it's insulting to her. Now, with regard to this idea that I've got lots of money, I have zero assets. I live in an apartment in Arlington with my son, and the financial disclosures will show you that my asset value is zero. But my real assets are my family and friends and an office that I deeply respect. Thank you.
And last response from Ms. Murphy.
Thank you. I believe that it's very important to put more candidates on the ballot and to put third-party candidates on the ballot. The very interesting thing about that is that you really don't need any money at all to get on the ballot if you're willing to ask for signatures on your petitions. And you don't need any money to run a campaign either, because you have wonderful venues like this. I did not pay to be here. I was invited because I'm on the ballot. We don't need to be hypnotized by the Madison Avenue or advertising budgets that we appear to be so addicted to. We need to just snap out of it and stop getting dragged around by whatever subliminal or explicit messages we're being told to respond to on these advertisements. We need to stop with the Super Bowl model of the big fight. It's always a big fight between that big red team and the big blue team. It's really not necessary or even productive. Obviously, it's totally unproductive, and now we're at a standstill. So therefore, I will align with Jason, thank you, who is independent, and I'm independent too. Vote for us. Thank you.
Mr. Span. This is to Mr. Howell.
Thank you. Pardon?
This is the first response will come from Mr. Howell.
The question I have is what is your position on supporting with taxpayers' money green energy firms such as Solyndra and others that seem to be premature as viable entities?
Thank you for that. You know, our country and our government has, over time, made incredible investments in ideas. And those ideas have given us lots of opportunity, like our space program, like Al Gore and the internet, for example. We've never failed when we've invested in ideas, and we should actually increase our innovation and our investment in ideas. Now, you've heard the phrase picking winners, and that's exactly what that would be if we picked a Solyndra, if we picked any other company. The government isn't so good at picking companies to invest in. That's not really their job, and I didn't see that anywhere in the Constitution when I read it, or the Declaration of Independence. So I'm not an advocate for specific companies, but I am an advocate for the community, for nonprofits, for schools of higher ed, like our best schools are the best in the nation still, and certainly our federal government combining together and saying, what can we research so that the biggest problems we face, whether it's cancer or AIDS or a bad economy, can actually be fixed through innovation for once. That's in part what we expect from our leaders in Congress and in all parts of the government, and that's what I'm going to bring as far as my experience and what I intend to do.
Mr. Moran.
It's not premature to be investing in clean energy, particularly solar and wind power and geothermal. And in fact, we're a little late to the game when you look at the investment that China and India and Brazil and many other countries are making. The fact is that this globe is warming, that the climate is changing, and that we will all pay a price, but not as steep a price as our children and grandchildren if we don't do something today. Now, Solyndra was a small fraction of the amount of money that has been put into helping wind and solar and other clean energy companies achieve their objectives. Solyndra was very unfortunate, and it's inexcusable that that money was lost, but in most cases they have been successful. But you don't read about those because they were successful. And I think we need to take the risk on behalf of the environment. Because if we don't, we're going to see the over-reliance upon fossil fuels both damage our health and severely diminish our future. And so it's not premature to be investing in clean energy, and I think the government needs to take an instrumental role, but they will certainly not make the kind of mistake that was made with Solyndra again.
Ms. Murphy.
Thank you. I would like to agree with Mr. Moran and also carry it a little further to say that, yes, we're very late to the game in promoting green energy and no fossil fuels. I would stand for no fossil fuels whatsoever. Solyndra was actually trying to make something and do something. I'm so sorry.
That's Exxon calling.
Thank you. But I would like to advocate for a transaction tax on Wall Street, 25 cents per transaction. You can make millions of dollars a day doing that, and set that money aside strictly for green energy jobs and other jobs that we need. There's all kinds of money going on. You hear on the radio, exchange traded funds, they're acting as if everything's fine on Wall Street. Well, let's get a little bit of money like that, like when the super fund was created, that worked quite well. Also, I would like to point out that I have seen this affordable housing issue as a former and actually current real estate agent. For many years, I'm familiar with the all the housing issues. We should have greenhouses. We should have solar houses. Where is the green and environmental impact in the affordable housing conversation? It needs to be #1 issue with housing. Is not affordability, it's the energy. Thank you.
Mr. Murray.
The free market has provided more jobs and brought more people out of poverty than any other system we've ever had on this planet. Now, I have no problem with green energy, but ladies and gentlemen, it has to be a function of the free market. Jim is abjectly wrong when he says Solyndra is the only one that didn't work. Few of them have worked. The market has to determine this, and when the market makes that play, then I think things will be just fine. But I do not believe that we should walk away from our natural resources. I do believe that we should build the Keystone Pipeline. That is 200,000 jobs, and not only that, it is 50% of our reliance on OPEC oil, right there. It is the biggest no-brainer we have. Now we need to pursue our natural gas and all of our fossil fuels, as well as clean energy. I am all of the above, but I believe that the market has to determine it, just like it always has. And when you try to pick a winner and a loser for political reasons, which is what happened, then you lose $500 billion of your money, and that's taxpayer money.
Our last
Can I
question
just,
is
how
from
much
Mr.
time do I have? Thank you. Those weren't my accusations on the insider trading. It was a book. The gentleman that wrote that was just as excoriating on Republicans who did that as he was Democrats.
The last question is from Mr. Pedley, and that'll be to Mr. Moran.
All right, how about a nice nonpartisan question? Sequestration. It's like a car with nobody at the wheel. It's on cruise control, it's headed for the cliff, and the kids are in back blaming each other. This is going to put the federal budget over the edge of the cliff. Why should we re-elect anyone?
Mr. Pebley, the sequestration idea was intended to be irrational, so crazy that the super committee would not possibly allow that as a default, but in fact would take responsible budgetary action. I voted against it. because I didn't think that a super committee was going to resolve this, and I was confident that the Republican majority was going to ensure that we continue to have this kind of budgetary crisis right up to the presidential election. And now, it's not to say that there is not fault on the Democratic side. Many of the people in my caucus are uncompromising, but not the majority and not the president. And even Mr. Boehner would have reached a compromise, but the Tea Party Republican types were not willing to, and in fact seemed to shrug their shoulders at the idea of the federal government defaulting on its debt obligations. I'm doing what I can to prevent the sequester from happening. I hope that I will be successful. There are others obviously working with me. But my guess right now is that it is not likely to happen, but I can't guarantee it, and it would be awful. And it certainly is an indictment of this Congress, which is run by people who really don't respect the government, don't really seem to feel that it's a problem if the government collapses and brings the economy with it.
Ms. Murphy.
I was a drama major in college, and but nothing I ever was involved in can compare to what we listen to on the radio and all the drama that we get pulled into. It's very distracting and unproductive. So to your question, why should you re-elect any of them? You shouldn't.
Well, I agree with Janet. And actually, ladies and gentlemen, you hear the hyper-partisanship, and it's them. Folks, we have a situation now where about 144,000 people here in Northern Virginia are going to lose their jobs. They're going to start getting their pink slips about 3 days before this election on November the 6th, and it's all defense sector. Who sits on Defense Sub-Appropriations Committee? Who's the congressman of this district? Who has been spending money like a crack addict for 22 years? That's how we've gotten into this situation, ladies and gentlemen. If we weren't in that situation, ladies and gentlemen, I will just, well, thank you, reclaiming my time. If we didn't have a situation where we spent money like it was going out of business, is that better? Then we wouldn't be in this situation. We wouldn't be in a situation where we're about to lose 144,000 jobs, not to mention what happens when you take $500 billion out of our defense budget. Secretary of Defense Leon Panetta has said that it will be, quote, devastating to our defense budget and our ability to defend ourselves. So we haven't had any hearings. We haven't had any town halls from my opponent in a year and a half. And this is something that should be addressed, and if I were the congressman of this district, this would be my focus.
Mr. Howard.
A lot of you folks I'm meeting for the first time, which is a good reason for me to come out here, because if we haven't met you yet, my wife and I, then I'm glad we're here tonight. The point is to meet you and give you an opportunity to engage with who I am and what I stand for. I was working my small business last summer when I saw the debt crisis be created by a lot of partisanship, and it was incredibly disappointing. As a former accountant, I knew what that meant. It meant our debt would get more expensive, our gas prices would go up, our food prices would go up, and those things have kind of happened. That's what worries me. That's why I'm involved. I've not been in politics before. You probably know that, because some of you haven't met me before. The biggest thing that we can do today is say, how can we stop some of this from happening? What control do we have? If we continue to elect the same people and hope for something different, we're not going to be very happy in the next couple of months, and then a couple months after that, and a couple months after that. I'm giving you an opportunity to make a difference with the things that we're also frustrated with. I'm a neighbor, live in Ballston. I'm frustrated too, and I want this to be different. We're a better country than our politicians have represented us to be. I know that, you know that, and this election is our opportunity to show that.
All right, now we will have our closing statements, starting with Mr. Murray.
Well, it's been nice to be here this evening, and I hope that we've been had an opportunity to talk about the issues so that we can look at the election in 63 days It is an important election, and elections have consequences, ladies and gentlemen. And I encourage you to look at the individuals, and I encourage you to look beyond party. And the fact is that we're all Americans, we're all in this together, and I think a fundamental requirement for a representative is that that representative is focused on the needs of the constituency and focused on the next generation and not the next election and not bank accounts. So I appreciate your attention tonight. I look forward to talking with you later on, and I'd like the honor of having your vote in 63 days on the 6th of November. Thank you.
Thank you. When you don't want to share your policy and vision with your constituents, you rely upon personal attack, and that's what we're going to see for the next 9 weeks. I fully expect that. That's what happened 2 years ago as well. I shared with you in my opening statement some of the many things that I've been able to achieve working in a bipartisan manner with Republicans who were statespeople, who really wanted to put partisanship aside in the public interest. And I mentioned the fact that this is one of the finest places to live and work and raise a family in the country. And I'm proud of that fact, proud of the fact that I had at least some small constructive role in achieving that objective. But I also referenced the policies that I'm running against, and the reason why I'm running, because of the alternative. Now, every Republican, they are in the majority, so they do have responsibility for what the Congress does, voted for the Ryan budget. Let me just mention some of the things that the Ryan budget does, in addition to cutting taxes by $4.5 trillion and giving the average millionaire more than $300,000 in tax cuts. They pay for that by taking money from the poor, food stamps, or affordable housing, education, 200,000 Head Start slots. Just one item, for example, that you're not going to hear about. Eliminating the child care tax credit, which means that 2 million single mothers who are now working will have to quit working because they have small children that they will not be able to provide for. So they either go on welfare, quit working, or lock their children in their apartment, and they're not going to do that. And that's the kind of budget that you're not going to hear about. But that's why I'm running, because that's not in our interest or in this country's interest. Thank you.
What a privilege to be here and to participate. Thank you so very much, Civic Federation and Arlington people. I just want to remind you that we stand for positive solutions, more trains, less traffic, more candidates, less apathy, and fiscally conservative, socially responsible policies. I mentioned a couple of specifics, one being the transaction tax on Wall Street, and another would be cutting subsidies to oil, auto, asphalt, and cement as to how to accomplish some of the things we need to do. Another area is I think we need to use a lot of more innovative ways of getting back on our feet with jobs. We need to bring a lot of people back into the workplace, and I think we need to reward employers and unions for supporting jobs, and to get away from the idea that that we don't really need people to be working. We do. It's a very crushing thing to lose your job and not have a job for years, which is really what is happening. It's invisible to us. Anyway, again, I want to thank you, and remember to vote, and don't forget the Independent Green Party.
I understand that many of you will be pretty excited to go home and watch the convention. So I'll be watching it too. I watch them both. I'm independent, right, after all. I see a lot of Moran stickers here. And I want to take a break from my comments to first thank Mr. Moran for being here. It means a lot that you're here as we try to debate as new candidates. This presentation wouldn't have been the same one in your absence. So I thank you for that. Some of the problems that we have in Congress is just a great deal of disrespect. What I've learned running for office for the first time is that we're real people. We have families. Part of my family is in the audience. Part of Mr. Moran's family is in the audience. I've met members of his family. They've been kind to me. Where I am different from Mr. Moran are on some policy issues, some issues we haven't gotten in today. I thought jobs was the biggest question in our campaign. We didn't get to that today, but I know we will eventually. I'll meet some of you, if not tonight, another night, and we'll talk about policy issues like the Dodd-Frank bill and what can be changed, what can be tweaked. We can talk about Sarbanes-Oxley, what can be changed, what can be tweaked. We can talk about exports, what can we do differently, what can be tweaked to make sure that we do get jobs, to make sure we do fix our economy, that we do balance our budget. Those are the things that I'm laser focused on. And I'm going to bring the same respect to Congress that I'm happy to offer Mr. Moran and the other candidates tonight. Thank you.
Concludes the congressional debate. Please join with me in congratulating all our participants. So with us tonight we have our second panel, which is for County Board. And we have with us, as I said, Libby Garvey, Matt Wavero, I apologize, and Audrey Clement. And they are going to be giving opening statements in the order in which they're seated. Again, you will be concluding your concluding remarks will be in the same order, and there will be 6 questions asked in a rotating order as well. So we will start with Ms. Garvey. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, James. It's great to see everybody tonight. Those of you who stuck around, thank you so much for staying. Tonight, I want to talk about Arlington's challenges and Arlington's strengths. First, the strengths. People love it here. We have been blessed for decades with progressive leadership, outstanding county employees, educated, involved citizens like yourselves, and top-notch schools. Smart policies and strategic planning have helped make Arlington one of the best places in the world to live. I agree with Congressman Moran on that. And as a result, our tax base is strong and could support the Arlington we love. Next, our challenges. Things are changing. Every year, it's more expensive to live here and start a business. Traffic gets worse, neighborhoods feel squeezed, and we lose diversity. More and more people simply can't afford to live in Arlington. Meanwhile, the federal government, long a mainstay of our economy, is shrinking. The possible federal sequestration threatens us far more than most, and our neighbors are working on their own smart growth. The Silver Line will connect Tysons to DC, and around us rents are going down and buildings up. In short, our comparative advantage is slipping. We need strong leadership to meet our challenges. I'm running for re-election because I can provide that leadership. First, I've got 3 areas of focus. First, we need to set our priorities strategically and focus on core services, infrastructure, public safety, transit, education, a strong social safety net. And there are limits to what we can do. Second, we need effective citizen involvement. We've got some hard decisions to make, and they should be made with citizens, not for them. And I want to ensure meaningful citizen involvement so we can make good decisions for everyone. Third, we need sensible transit. I am working deliberately to gather information on the streetcar proposal. I'm asking hard questions about issues of cost and cost escalation, reliability, environmental impact, flexibility, and assumptions about ridership. The more I study the issue, the more I believe a modern bus rapid transit system called a BRT is by far the best solution for us and for the region. I look forward to your questions tonight, and I hope I'll have your support. Thank you.
Mr. Wavero.
Thanks. Thank you, James. Civic Federation delegates and neighbors, according to the Gallup poll, confidence in our system of government has been steadily declining for the last decade, and it's up to us to restore that confidence. My name is Matt Wavero. I'm a 100 Homes for the Homeless survey volunteer, a junior achievement instructor, and a frequent speaker at county board meetings advocating for a more comprehensive affordable housing policy, fiscal responsibility, and government accountability. I'm running for a seat on the county board because I believe that by electing a new voice, we can ensure that all voices are heard. I'm running to prove that we can balance our budget when property tax assessments go up without having to raise rates on top of that. I'm running to develop new tools to make sure our affordable housing policy better serves our residents who are just starting in their careers and those who live paycheck to paycheck. I'm running to appoint an independent inspector general so that taxpayers can be sure that they get the good value for their tax dollar. I'm running to advocate for a better plan, which I have from the start, a better plan for Columbia Pike than the trolley. Blue Line service cuts, reductions through what is known as Rush Plus, has significantly reduced north-south Blue Line transit service. We can use this opportunity to better connect via an enhanced bus service from Columbia Pike and Crystal City into Roslyn and connect South Arlington residents to the regional transit system. And we can do that for a much more reasonable price than the trolley plans. I look forward to working with colleagues on the county board to make sure that everyone has a voice and that we live up to the level of collaboration we all desire and expect to be the hallmark of our local politics. Thanks so much, and I look forward to your questions.
Ms. Clement.
Good evening. I'm Audrey Clement. I'm running for Arlington County Board, and I seek your vote. I'm an 8-year Westover resident with a doctorate in political science and service as a congressional fellow. As a longtime Green Party leader and civic activist, I've worked hard to promote a better quality of life for Arlington residents. My opponent, Libby Garvey, says she's an independent voice on county board. Yet she approved the county's capital improvement program, which includes $50 million this year alone for Phase 2 of the Longbridge Park Aquatic Center, and is projected to cost $72 million before it's done. She also approved the Columbia Pike Neighborhoods Area Plan, which will eliminate 2,800 affordable units and transform the Pike into a gentrified urban canyon. Garvey abstained on the vote for the $250 million Columbia Pike trolley, which is amazing considering that she was elected to take a stand on controversial projects, not back away from them. Like my opponent, Matt Wavero, I oppose County Board's profligate capital spending program. However, I have a specific plan of action to promote fiscal responsibility that emphasizes funding basic needs and investment in sustainable infrastructure. If elected to County Board, I pledge to keep libraries open 7 days a week, replace trailers with classrooms, repave the streets within 6 months, not piecemeal. Next, I will eliminate wasteful spending projects like the Signature Theater, Longbridge Park Aquatic Center, and the Columbia Pike Trolley. Finally, in promoting sustainable growth, I pledge to consolidate housing programs in one agency, to provide a year-round homeless shelter that will not break the county budget, to use the commercial real estate tax to provide more art bus service instead of the Pike Trolley, hire an inspector general to audit the budget, install solar panels on all public buildings. Thank you for inviting me to this forum. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. The following Civic Federation delegates, if you will please walk to the center aisle microphone. Betty Hill, Michael Beer, Catherine Scruggs, Loretta Reed, Timothy Weiss, and Sarah Shortall. And as Ms. Garvey opened, the first question will go to Mr. Wavero.
Excellent.
Two of you specifically mentioned supporting an independent inspector general. I would like to know how each of you feel about this.
Thank you for the question, Betty. I appreciate it. I'm in favor of an independent inspector general. As everyone is aware, we have a county board that has a county manager, and that type of setup means that we have a corporate board and a CEO type setup at the top of our county government. And every corporate entity that I'm aware of has an independent internal audit function, and I think it would be appropriate in the case where we have such an active and engaged population and group of neighbors that we have that independent or internal inspector to look over county programs, look for opportunities to find efficiencies, and also look for opportunities where county employees can be even more effective in the missions that we've given them, so that they have those resources and those opportunities to continue to build their careers and their skills and serve the public even more efficiently and more effectively.
Ms. Clement.
Yeah, well, I think the need for an auditor to inspect the budget was pointed out in recent testimony on the county's capital improvement program by Mr. Wayne Kubicki himself, who is chairperson of the Revenues and Expenditures Committee for the Federation. He pointed out that County Board, though policy requires it, had not produced a 6-year forecast to estimate expenditures and revenues over that period of time. Hence, it is impossible to evaluate the impacts of the capital improvement program itself. Basically, we're floating in financial uncertainty right now as to whether or not the county can afford the budget that the capital improvement program that it recently adopted, and for which it is asking this year alone in excess of $150 million in bond referenda. So I really think that the need was pointed out by the Civic Federation itself.
Ms. Garvey.
Thank you. I do not believe that we should have an Inspector General. I agree with Mr. Wavero that in general, when you've got a corporate board and a manager or a CEO, you have an independent audit function. We have that. We have an audit every year, and it's independent, done outside of the county. When you want an Inspector General is when you think there's really something bad going on. I haven't gotten any indication from someone that there is fraud or abuse going on in the county. If I thought there were, I would ask for an independent inspection of that. I actually did that many, many years ago when I first ran for school board, which you may remember, because we had issues with our capital program, and it was clear to me we really needed some outside folks to come in. We don't need that right now. We certainly need an audit. If any of you think that there's a problem, this is my job. Come to me, tell me, we'll talk about it, and if it looks like there's evidence that we need to have an outside investigation on something, I'll work on that and I'll call for it. But until that time, I don't believe we need it. I think it would be actually not helpful and a waste of taxpayer money.
Mr. Beer, and this the first response will be from Ms. Clement.
My question is about smart growth and density. In the 37 years, we're going to have 420 million people in the United States. Is Arlington going to do its part? What is your vision for the population projection for what Arlington should be in 2050? And what kind of smart growth and density proposals are you putting forth to achieve those targets?
My principal concern with smart growth as interpreted by the Coalition for Smarter Growth and by county board members who subscribe to its vision is a lack of concern for the impacts of high-density development on the county. That is my principal concern, and already we can see the effects of smart growth, some of the negative effects of smart growth on this county. For example, we currently have a burgeoning school population. The county currently is estimating $125 million just to redress part of that problem. In addition, we have severe transportation impacts. We have, on the one hand, a desire to produce walkable communities, yet an unwillingness on the part of residents themselves to get out of their cars, and a desire on the part of county board to appease the public by producing parking spaces for the cars that we currently cannot even accommodate. So I think that we need to rethink what we truly mean about high-density development and the impacts that high-density development will have upon our county in the future.
Ms. Garvey.
It's me, yes. I think the answer to this is, as with many, it's about planning and priority setting. I think we're headed to about 250,000. We've got about 211,000 folks in Arlington now, and we are increasing, and I see it every day on the county board as I'm learning about all of these new projects that are coming, and they are basically increasing density in our urban corridors, Crystal City, the Boston-Roslyn corridor. And you can see that they're getting increased density. We're going to get more people here. One thing we need to do, which we are doing, is by right, businesses can increase only to a certain amount. If they want more, then they need to negotiate with us. And that's what we do, working with businesses so if they have more height, bringing more people, they provide more benefits to the community, which helps ease the stress and the strain. That money can go for parks. Certainly as we get more and more urban and more crowded, we want to have better, very good connected parks. We finally are getting in place, not quite yet, but it's coming soon, Mr. Nardinelli, a land acquisition policy, which we need. So we also need to have an outstanding transit system, which is one of the reasons I am looking at very strongly at a bus rapid transit system, because I believe we can get that in place a lot more rapidly for a lot less money and actually have a better running system, not only because of the connectivity, but because of its flexibility. So if there's a car stopped somewhere, you know, a streetcar can't move, but a bus can. And I'm really, when I use the word bus, I am talking about a kind of vehicle that really we have not seen. It looks very much like the modern streetcar. It's clearly a modern vehicle. So the answer is planning, transit, parks, and we need to be working together as we move forward. The time's up.
Mr. Wavero.
Oh, thank you. What I think in 2050, I think as the population grows, we're going to see much more pressure on our urban places to fit the needs of residents. And I think we started to see some of the planning efforts that go into there. I think over the next 20 to 30 years, we're going to see those change as well. So my view of smart growth is not to develop everything all at once, but to make sure that it's an iterative process and that we can continue to adjust and adapt those plans where that density does come. At the same time, the pressures to try and push into single-family neighborhoods is going to grow and grow. I would definitely be a voice against that, and we need to maintain the wonderful mix of single-family houses as well as dense areas. I live in Crystal City. I prefer the density, but that doesn't mean that I don't appreciate and very much value as part of Arlington the mix between single-family neighborhoods and the dense places. As more and more people move here, it's what makes everyone feel at home in Arlington, and it's something that I very much appreciated living in Arlington, and I hope that people in 2050 can appreciate that as well.
Ms. Scruggs, this will be the first one for Ms. Garvey.
Yes, please speak about the resources that the county has to fulfill the Pike Plan, which was adopted in July.
I'm not sure I understand your question. Could you elaborate? The resources to, are you talking about taxes and things? Is that what you're, I'm just not quite sure what you're getting at.
Yes.
Excuse me?
Money.
Money, okay, yeah. Well, the Columbia Pike Plan, one of the issues with the streetcar that we're looking at in transportation is in Crystal City. It's actually a business tax that's going to support that. On the Columbia Pike right now, it's not. So it would be the county as a whole that would be supporting a new transit system there. And that's something we need to be aware of when we're looking at the costs of such a system and what that's going to do. We also are, part of the reason we need to get better transit on the system, on the Pike, just to make it work better, is to support higher density. And as I talked about in my earlier question about affordable housing, the way we can tackle affordable housing, one of the major tools we have is by granting excess density to developers. They in turn put money into, we have various funds, revolving funds that we can use. Sometimes they provide affordable housing. I really think given the market forces that are at work on Columbia Pike, the only way we can afford to preserve affordable housing and preserve the Pike in a way that we will recognize is to actually foster development with good transit and then good negotiations to make sure that that development yields support for the people who need it there. I hope that answers your question because I wasn't, okay.
Mr. Wavero.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the plan of completely redeveloping the Pike in order to try and save affordable housing is what's going to hurt affordable housing on the Pike the most. My plan would be to develop tools as well as the current committed affordable tools that we've seen in the Columbia Pike Neighborhood Plan and the tools addendum to that plan. We should continue when development does occur to secure committed affordable units, but at the same time we need to develop the tools to create and preserve market rate affordable housing. We shouldn't see 20 or 30 Howard Manors where teachers and other middle income professionals come before the county board and say, please don't make my apartment a committed affordable unit. I make less than $60,000 a year. I'd really like to live in the community where I work. So I think there's a lot of work that the county board has ahead of it. I look forward to developing those tools so that we can have a good mix of committed affordable units as well as a very strong market rate affordable housing policy that works with developers and landowners to make sure that we aren't excluding middle-income residents from Arlington. You start to look at our housing policy, there's a big donut hole in the middle for people that make more than $50,000 a year and make less than $80,000 a year. We shouldn't be excluding those people from Arlington, and they shouldn't have to qualify for a government program in order to live in Arlington.
Ms. Clement.
Well, what a lot of people don't realize is that the density contemplated for the Pike is not predicated on some planner's vision of what is optimal. It's not even predicated on what the Coalition for Smarter Growth might advocate. It's predicated on one thing, and that's developers' return on investment. The planners for the county have determined that in order for the developers to make a profit on the Pike, the population density is going to have to more than double. In fact, it has to. It is now projected to be in another 20 years 2.5 times what its current density is, which is now 9,000 units. It will be going to 23,000 units, and the reason for this is something called ROI, return on investment. The return on investment for a very small number of people, namely the developers who are going to tear down and rebuild the Pike. Now I ask you, do you want to place your future in the hands of those developers? If you do, then you will support the Columbia Neighborhood Areas Plan that was recently adopted by County Board with the support of Libby Garvey. If you do not believe that developers should tell you what your density should be, then you will vote for me.
Ms. Reed.
Mr. President, mine is for the school board, which I indicated on the paper.
I apologize, Ms. Reed. Do you have a question for the county board?
Not really.
All right. Well, I appreciate your candor, Ms. Reed.
Okay.
Well, we will go to Ms. Weiss and then Ms. Shortall, and then if Ms. Shortall and tell me, you can please pull another name.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Okay. And this will be for Mr. Wavero, will be the first respondent.
Well, it's for Mr. Wavero and all the others. My name is Timothy Wise. I'm from the ACTA. The question is, since it takes 3 votes to shut down the streetcar plan, which 2 of the other county board members would you target, if you will, to convince them that the Arlington County taxpayers don't need a glorified streetcar plan?
Thank you for the question, Tim. I don't think I would target any one individual county board member. I think my plan and my approach to working with colleagues on the county board would be to try and build a consensus and collaboration with everyone on the county board. And so I think to target one individual would not be appropriate. I think the arguments that residents of Columbia Pike and the community as a whole deserve a better plan for Columbia Pike than the trolley is a very it's not an easy argument to make, but it's one that should resonate among county board members who are looking out for the public interest of our community. We should have an articulated bus that serves all the way into Roslyn, like I talked about earlier, that better connects people to regional transit. All of our other transit projects to date, including Metro, has better connected Arlington residents to the regional transit system and to jobs and opportunities across the Washington, D.C. area. And this project on Columbia Pike should not be any different, and that's why I support connecting Columbia Pike and Crystal City all the way into Roslyn.
Ms. Clement.
Well, my guess is that the votes that I would be looking for to vote against the Pike are definitely Walter Tejada, because he has a very broad-based constituency on the Pike. He's got a lot of Hispanic residents living there who will most undoubtedly be displaced as a result of development on the Pike. So I'm pretty sure I have Walter Tejada's vote right now. And the other vote is Mary Hines, because I was on the campaign trail with Mary Hines last year, and she, along with Walter Tejada, and they were both very gracious. And I think just by virtue of the fact that we rubbed shoulders, and she was compelled to listen to some of my arguments and got a lot of feedback from the community, I think that she is the next most persuadable member of the board.
Ms. Garvey.
Well, thank you, Mr. Wise, for the question, and Mr. McCaffrey. And thank you, Mr. McCaffrey, for putting it in the paper, because that helped prepare, right? Well, first, I am going to follow Mr. Wavero's lead. I don't think it's smart to sort of point out who you're going to be working with specifically. I mean, we're a team. The county board is a team, and we work together. And I have been so impressed working with my colleagues. I mean, I've always known they're good people. You've got a really smart county board. You've got a really intelligent county board, a lot of expertise, and really busy people. One of the things that I think I've been able to bring is a fresh sort of set of eyes. I'm the new kid on the block. I ask some questions. And I think when we're all busy, and we've been moving down this track, this road, whatever pun you want to take, for about a decade. And over that time, a lot has changed. And I think it's now time for all of us to sort of step back and really examine what we're looking at and what the alternatives are. And I don't think anybody's really had the time or the opportunity so much to do that yet, because that's just kind of the way groups work. So I hope that my raising questions and my analysis, and I am working with all of my colleagues, because we're all a team and we all want the best for this county. And that done, what persuades my colleagues, I think, is analysis and logic and citizen involvement. So I hope you all, when I made my comments about not taking a position right now, part of that was because I wanted to get a conversation going in this community. So if you all would please educate yourselves a little bit about what a bus rapid transit system today can do. Check out Cleveland and Eugene, Oregon, for example. Check out some costs, and I'm going to be doing more work on it and getting more information out, and I think working with my colleagues who probably will be doing the same.
All right, Ms. Shortle, and then our last speaker will be actually Mr. Wayne Kubicki.
Okay.
And Ms. Shortle's question will be first answered by Ms. Clement.
All right. At the July 24 County Board meeting on the sign ordinance, Libby Garvey voted to allow rooftop signs to blight the sacred landscape surrounding the national memorials, including the Arlington National Cemetery, Lincoln Memorial, and the Pentagon 9/11 Memorial, even after the National Park Service testified and urged the board to protect the landscape as pristine and solemn. Instead, she said it was more important that business, even Hooters, have the right, and I repeat, the right, to erect rooftop signs in Arlington. If elected, would you revise the sign ordinance to prohibit rooftop signs facing the Memorial Corridor?
Very definitely, yes. First, I want to confess that I only scanned the sign ordinance document. And so I want to tell you or advise you that my knowledge of the sign ordinance is somewhat superficial. However, I did note very specifically that the National Park Service had opposed the by right placement of signs within the site of the national memorials. And therefore, I would revisit that sign ordinance if elected to county board. And I would urge the adoption of the recommendations, all the recommendations of the National Park Service with respect to that sign ordinance.
Ms. Garvey.
Well, the issue of the sign ordinance was a difficult one. And in all of these development issues, we need to balance. It's always about balance. And, you know, your board member, we get paid the big bucks because we're in the middle, caught in the middle. And it's a balance between quality of life for residents and our need to have a commercial base in this county, which I talked about earlier. And that base is under threat. In the process of looking at this issue, I realized that we didn't have rules and regulations that were explicit for the size of the signs, where they could face, how bright they could be. And that's how you need to protect the neighborhoods and protect our community, is with regulations that are specific and policies. Our vote then adopted clear standards, which I think helps a lot. I believed it was very important to have some structure to what we did. Given Arlington's urban nature and location, denying all signs, I think, would really just simply damage our future. And there, as I said, is going to be much stiffer competition for our dollars and for people moving here. And many businesses have said it's a deal breaker if they can't put up signs. That said, I know I'm never going to be able to please everyone. I have had a few people write to me, and I've been able to write back and explain my vote, which I appreciate, because I really will always do what I think is best for Arlington, and it is a delicate balance. It's not easy. I'd like to please everyone all the time, but I can't. And I will always do what I think is best for the community. And I'm sorry if we disagree on some of my choices.
Mr. Wavero.
On the signs, I think that the standard that the county board put into the sign ordinance that regulates the luminescence of signs, especially the luminescence of signs in those strategic areas that you talked about, is an appropriate first step, and can be the type of regulation and regulatory system within zoning that is adjustable and can be revisited if there's an issue on it. So asking the sign owner to turn down the sign if it's interfering with some of our national treasures that we're very lucky to have here in Arlington, I think is a good first step. And I would support further recommendations as the science and the luminescence issue of the signs continues, and to make sure that any signs in those areas are tasteful and not disruptive of the dark night sky, but also a very important wayfinding and placemaking part of our smart growth development.
Mr. Kubicki is our last questioner, and Ms. Garvey is the first responder.
Libby, you're smiling already.
I've been trying to guess, Wayne, what the question would be. And if the streetcar question hadn't been asked, I would have guessed it.
Ms. Garvey, yes.
Excuse me, no dialogue. I'm sorry, Wayne.
Libby, you laid out a whole bunch of priorities you bring to our spending in the start of your presentation. I didn't hear a $70 million pool building that will cost us about $8 million a year in debt service and operating costs in that priority. Can we afford that building? Do each of you support it or oppose it?
I actually believe we do, and this is a position I have changed. When I first ran, I was thinking, in the schools, we've been building beautiful pools. The community really enjoys them, and in fact, some years ago when we did a customer satisfaction survey in Arlington, the lack of pools was one of the things people complained about. Lately, the most recent one we did, not so much, because we've been putting in some wonderful pools. That said, so I came on thinking this maybe is not the best way to spend money, because we do have tight money. Then I started to look at the design and look at the site. And frankly, if you go down there, it is a wow. I believe that this pool, this facility, will bring in what it needs to in business and attracting tourists and really putting us on the map even more than we are now. It is absolutely a signature site. People will be swimming in the pool, and they will be able to see the Washington Monument, the Capitol building. It is an incredible location. So I see people in Paris saying, "Est-ce que vous avez naté dans la piscine à Arlington?" I think I got that right. Anyway, Walter could do it in Spanish, what they'd be saying in Madrid. I think this will really put us on the map. So, Mr. Kubicki, I really was where you were originally, and after looking at it and really considering it, and for the reasons I talked about earlier about what I think we need to do with Arlington to give us a strong economic base, I do actually support it now.
Mr. Wavero.
Last time I checked, Arlington was already on the map. The pool building not only includes $42 million in bond costs currently, it also includes $20 million of density to be sold and dropped on a neighborhood near you. I don't know of anyone that is looking forward to that additional density. There's been some issues on exactly where it would be and if it could be properly sited in the proper amount of time that the county board wants to move on this. In terms of the total cost of the bonds, we're starting to see the bond and debt, the revenues needed to keep our AAA bond rating rising and rising, so much so that the county will need to collect additional revenues each year for the next 10 years. And that's committing to us to either an increase in property tax assessments or an increase in property tax rates. And I, for one, don't think with the sequestration that we talked about, that we heard about earlier, I don't think it's the time that we should be locking in rent and tax increases for every Arlington resident each year for the next 10 years. I think I'm in favor of pools and opportunities for people to use public pools, but I don't think it's the time to build an aquatic center. I live next door to that site. It's a wonderful site. I visit it. It's not the time to start digging up the cap that was put over it based on the environmental remediation on that site, and to open up that can of worms and go down that trail of spending and tax and rent increases. It's too much for Arlington to afford at this time.
Ms. Clement.
Well, I have to say that I agree with everything that Matt Wavro has just said. In addition, I want to repeat Mr. Kubicki's objection at the July hearing at which the capital improvement program, including the aquatic center, was approved. And he said at that time that the capital improvement program was predicated on expected revenue increases of 3 or 4% per year, and I don't know, a 5% bond rating and some other very general assumption. But these very general assumptions are not sufficient to make an educated decision about whether the county can afford facilities like the $72 million aquatic center. There's something fundamentally wrong with the state of Denmark if the county cannot come up with a revenue and expenditure projection in the out years. This is what we lack, and this is what county policy specifically requires it to do. So I've got a problem right there. Even before we talk about a specific expenditure, I'm concerned about county board's MO. That is the way that it operates, the way that it determines the affordability of various projects. I do not believe that the county made any type of an informed decision about whether it could actually afford that expenditure. It did not make any type of other...
Time. All right, we will begin our closing statements as we started, beginning with Ms. Garvey.
Well, thank you again for all being here, and thank you so much to the Civic Federation for doing this. I've been doing this for a number of years, and I think it's really a wonderful event and a great way to keep people kind of involved and informed. I really would like to have your vote in November. I think I really do add value, and I'll talk a little bit more about that, but besides that, personally, I'm having a blast. I am loving this job. It is fascinating. I am really enjoying learning about transportation. The development issues are huge. I mean, we really do need to be preserving our neighborhoods while at the same time managing, having growth come where we need to have dense areas. And that is a delicate balance. It's a real challenge, and it's a worthwhile challenge to be working on, and I am very much enjoying it. I think I also, as I say, add value to the board. I've talked about it being a team. In my 15 years of experience on the school board, I do bring a different perspective and a different set of eyes to the work, and I think that has been helpful already. I hope I am adding, my colleagues think I'm adding value, and certainly over time, as I learn more, I will continue to contribute more, and I really would like to have that opportunity. Of course, there are some differences I see, and I am working to try and figure out what are the differences between how the school board handled things and the county board. And I'd like to talk a little bit about one of those, which is community engagement, because we didn't talk about that too much tonight. So one of the things I've seen is on the school board, we never tended to make last-minute changes to decisions that have been through long processes. And on the county board, more often, we do. We had some extremely long meetings the other night, actually 3 days worth. And part of it was because people felt they had to come and talk for hours, because at times, despite years of a process and good input from fantastic staff that we have and working with citizens, at the last minute, the county board sometimes changes things. Now, I'm not going to say I'd never change things, but I really think that needs to become very rare so that citizens have more sort of trust in the process. And I hope as we work through citizen engagement with the PLACE initiative, we actually are going to recommit as a board to the processes and how they're going to work. There's some other differences. My time is up. I'm really enjoying this. I'm enjoying talking to people. Send me emails, call me. I'm loving talking about stuff. Love to talk to you some more.
Mr. Wavro.
First, thank you to the Civic Federation for hosting this forum. I want to close by talking about what my fellow residents should expect from me as a potential county board member. But first, I just have to comment on one thing. If we start to lock down the types of things that the county board can decide in the room, then what you say at the dais and when you turn in that public comment slip means that it would mean less and less. And I think that's a very important part of what we do here in Arlington, is that we have those discussions at the highest levels in front of the county board, and the words and the stories and the knowledge that citizens bring to that process makes a difference. And I think it would be a real mistake to turn that back to a process where what people say in the room doesn't matter. So I just wanted to get that on the record. But I view the public service as a privilege. a privilege to serve my neighbors and make sure that no Arlington resident feels managed or ignored by county government. I want to work with other members of the county board to make sure that when a resident expresses a doubt or a concern, it is an opportunity to make sure that we are practicing the engagement, responsiveness, and collaboration that we all expect from our political discourse. Responsiveness from elected officials isn't something we can prescribe or measure through a survey. It's something that we need to practice every day. You have my word that I will take full advantage of the opportunity to bring more responsiveness, engagement, and collaboration than the current one-party controlled county board can provide. I'm running to make sure that we practice the type of engagement that when new items come to the county board, that we ensure that neighborhood concerns are addressed, like on the Glen Carlin School, to make sure that the concerns of the neighborhood is addressed at the public facilities process. So I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you tonight. I ask for your vote in November, and I ask for your support as well. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Let's go back.
Arlington County is a great place to live thanks to citizens who actively participate in civic life. But our lifestyle is threatened because County Board doesn't understand the difference between sustainable growth and smart growth. To be sustainable, public infrastructure must keep pace with new residential and commercial construction. Sustainability also requires County Board to support, not discourage, construction of moderate income housing. Otherwise, those who move into the county are stuck in a never-ending cycle of tax and rent increases as others are gentrified out, which is not economically sustainable for anyone in the long run. To be sustainable, we need to do more than accumulate lead points. We need truly energy-efficient buildings and on-site renewable energy. To be sustainable, we must appreciate the difference between needs and wants. We don't need a $72 million aquatic center when Northern Virginia is already drowning in swimming pools. We don't need a $250 million trolley when we can have world-class bus service for 1/5 the cost. We may want a cultural center and a black box theater, but we must get the private sector to finance them, not the taxpayers. We may admire the already overcapacity Taj Mahal high schools that we recently constructed, but we don't need to break the bank to provide more classrooms. If elected, I pledge no real estate tax rate increase because rising real estate assessments will enable County Board to fully fund libraries, schools, streets, public safety, and other basic needs. Moreover, I plan to emphasize recycling and renewable energy, hire an inspector general to audit the budget, and make developers pay their fair share of costs. You can find out more about my campaign for a greener Arlington by visiting audreyclement.org. To preserve the Arlington Way, please vote for me, Audrey Clement, on November 6th.
Well, that concludes our candidate night forum. Please join with me in congratulating all of us.